All right, thank you for joining. We're just waiting until everyone gets into the room. I'll give everyone just a minute. Okay, we are going to go ahead and get started. We want to thank you all for joining us at our virtual meeting for our downtown Mill Avenue streetscape improvements. I'm Shauna Warner with Neighborhood Services and helping the team out today with the meeting. We are recording the meeting. We're going to post it on the website afterwards for those who couldn't join us today. So just so you know, you will be recorded. And then just during the presentation for the recording, we just ask if everyone can remain on mute. That helps us have a better quality recording. And then we will have time for questions and answers. And at that point, then everyone can unmute. So again, thanks for joining us. And I'm going to turn it over to Eric Iverson, who's our Sustainability and Resilience Director.
Thank you, Shauna. And good to see everyone. Hopefully you all can hear me okay, assuming. Yes. All right. Thanks everyone for attending. We had a really good conversation on Monday for our first public meeting. And like Shauna said, I'm Eric Iverson, City of Tempe, Sustainability and Resilience Director. We have many other staff that are on this meeting that are subject matter experts and are available for any questions that may come up. We will be sharing all the different information about the different partnership departments that we're working with as part of this presentation. But really this is, the meeting you're at today is for the Mill Avenue, what we're calling the Mill Avenue Refresh. This is in downtown Tempe. We're looking at from Rio Salado Parkway to University Drive on Mill Avenue. And this project has been briefed to the council a couple times in the last year. And the phase that we're in right now is the public feedback phase. So we are going to many different boards and commissions, stakeholder groups, downtown merchants, as well as these opportunities for public input this week. And so thanks again for your comments and for attending today. And then at the end of this presentation, we have a link to, if you haven't already seen it, we have a link to where you can comment online to officially weigh in on the project. So the council, this is citywide, we're doing refresh projects around Tempe, and really it's just reinvestment in our infrastructure in Tempe. As an aging city, this is really important. And Mill Avenue itself has not been, had major infrastructure reinvestment in over 40 years. So it is time to do some important elements. All the things that we look at when we do a streetscape project are important, but these are the on screen here. These are the things that council has prioritized that this project really hits on. So many things that we hope we're improving in the way of council priorities as we move forward with redesigning Mill Avenue. And these are the things that we're going to talk about today that our consultant team from J2 is going to give more detail on. Again, we're in a public feedback portion of this project, and we are looking at getting all sorts of voices in the community to weigh in on what's important to see on Mill Avenue as we go forward. We're hoping for a project that both respects the history of Mill Avenue and the history of Tempe, but while also introducing new and forward-thinking infrastructure that can help us be stronger as a city sustainably going into the future. We're going to be focusing on the project schedule itself and a little bit of an overview. And the decisions that are before us today are, what does the tree palette look like? And what does the sidewalk look like? And within that framework of those two really important elements, we'll then fill in all those other things that you see listed here. What does the shade look like? What does our public art look like? Lighting and other aesthetic elements will be kind of filled in once we get that framework of the trees and the sidewalks. And as I mentioned, we have a lot of folks that are partners on this project. We have a design team, J2, that will be going through the presentation. And then we have all these other external partners like Tempe Tourism, ASU, and the Downtown Tempe Authority, which really runs our Merchants Association in the downtown. And then many boards and commissions, we are attending those right now and getting feedback from those important citizen groups. that help guide decision-making at the city. And then, of course, all the other different departments of the city that have subject matter experts, as I mentioned, that are important for us to help lead the project. I'm not going to go through this whole schedule, but we are again in the public outreach phase of this project. We will be going back to council for final direction on the tree and sidewalk elements at the end of September, on September 28th, as is listed here. So I would encourage everyone that's attending this meeting to go to that meeting as well, and certainly have another opportunity to weigh in on the design direction of this project. We hope to have final designs done by the end of the year. That's what we're steering towards, and then start construction as early as first part of 2024 and experience a lot of the construction in calendar year 2024. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Kurt, who is with our design team at J2. And Kurt's going to walk you through the tree and sidewalk elements and the decisions therein. Kurt?
All right, great. Thanks, Eric. I appreciate that. So thank you, everybody, for joining us here today. And I just kind of want to give you a brief overview of the project area that we're looking at. So the area that we are looking at is, Mill Avenue, and it's going from University on the south all the way to Rio Salado Parkway on the north end. So, and then from right of way to right of way, which basically is building facade to building facade. So we're looking at the hardscape throughout that area. The trees, that's kind of what we're here to present today, is the hardscape elements and the tree species. So we have 3 hardscape concepts that we'll go through here shortly, and then also 2 concepts for the tree species and the tree design. So again, we're just looking at from University to Rio Salado Parkway on Mill Avenue. Thanks. Some of the things that we've done, we did a DCR early on, design concept report, and some of the elements that came out of that and that we're really focused on, and what Mill Avenue is essentially about, is business owners, but also the activities that are there, the festivals, the music scene that is there that has come out, and then also art, and those are features that we want to represent in the new landscape as we go through Mill Avenue here. Eric, thanks. Okay, so the first concept, concept 1 of 3. So the concept here that you're seeing in front of you is a ribbon, kind of a ribbon concept here that we have. The ribbon that is going through, that's kind of the reddish color as it goes through this area, is a salvage brick. So we're looking to try and salvage some of the brick, bring that history that's there. Currently, we're looking at taking some of the salvage brick and creating a ribbon as it goes through the hardscape, and then adding in some bright colors. The blue there is the lithocrete, that is a concrete material, but colored in that also. And then introducing some concrete unit pavers. That's the kind of the speckled look there. The unit pavers would be intermingled with that. And then we'd also, like the artwork that we were talking about previously, we have medallions, lithomosaic artwork. And that's the first enlargement there is the artwork. And, we want to place some of those items in there to provide the history, and then also add a little features to each one of the blocks as we go. And this here that you're looking at is just kind of a sample as it would go down through the entire corridor. This is from 4th Street to 5th Street on the west side. So we also have, the trees shown there just in light, because we're really focused on the hardscape here. So there would be tree grates, possibly tree grates with concrete bands around them, and then some sill cells, and we'll get into that here a little bit further on in the presentation. Eric, if you could, next slide, please. And this next slide, we just have a few views as we go down through the corridor. This is concept 1. So this is a view of what it would look like looking north as you're walking down through the corridor here. And we can kind of go through these. Yeah, so that shows kind of the litho mosaic. It's a little bit more in detail. That's, like a tile that's in place, placed into concrete. So it stays in that area. You can see the salvaged brick ribbon as it goes down through the corridor, along with the newer brick pavers in there. So that was concept one. Concept two is very similar to what is currently out there. We have the salvage brick aspect of it. So that's the main portion of this concept here. But we also have concrete unit pavers at the corners, and then possibly medallions on each end of those corners to provide the the color and a little bit more dynamic in the streetscape. So with the brick, we're trying to salvage as much of the brick as possible, and we'll have to see what we can salvage on that, and we're currently working to see what we can salvage and what percentage we can get from that. So this is views of concept two, same views that you saw in concept one, but with the brick pattern, with the salvage brick. You can see the tree grates around the trees, seating areas, some bullpen areas for restaurants that are out there. So that would be some of the things that we'd look at as we go through the design. And this is concept three. This one, it's kind of a rhythm or a, as you walking down through the corridor here. Again, would like to use salvage brick paving in there, and then introduce some concrete unit pavers as more of that rhythm. So the salvage brick would kind of correspond with the tree grates that you see there, and it would create this rhythm as you would be walking down through the corridor, and still utilizing some of the brick, so bringing the history, but then also the concrete unit pavers. That's kind of some of the newer style, kind of bringing it into the modern era here now. And then that represents also some of the buildings that are being currently done throughout the corridor too. Some of the newer hotels and apartment complexes. Thank you. So here's the views looking north as we're walking down through the corridor. So you can see the brick coming off of the tree grates, so it's in line with the trees. And then you have the brick, or the concrete pavers in between that, creating that rhythm as you're walking down through the corridor. This slide, kind of introduces the materials that we're looking at. The upper right, or the upper left, is the lithocrete. So that can be done in different colors. It's a concrete material, very sturdy, very hardy. We've used this in other projects. So that's a really nice aspect and a way to bring in color into the project. And then just kind of going through some of the other concrete unit pavers, standard kind of plank pavers. They're a little bit longer than the 4x8s in the brick. So we have a couple of different materials there. And then the silvicels. I kind of mentioned the silvicels previously. This is a good way to provide stormwater management. It brings in the water into these, what they call silvicels, and helps with the root structure of the trees and creating a healthier root. So it's a water harvesting type of infrastructure that we would look at putting under the tree grates and then in between each of the trees. And we're looking at also possibly, like in section A, is going out into the parallel parking area too. And we're just kind of looking into that and seeing if that is something feasible that we could do. But it has a really good economic benefit, bringing in the stormwater, helps the trees grow, brings in that water that will just help them flourish down the Mill Avenue area. So now we're getting into the trees aspect of it. So currently the ficus, so the next 5 slides will show the tree palette that we're introducing. So there's the ficus is one, the Tipuwana tipu is another tree that we're bringing in to that plant palette. The Eucalyptus papuana, the ghost gum, and then the Swan Hill, Olea europea, the fruitless olive. So those don't have the fruit that the original species did. And then the Pistache latensis, the mastic tree. So that one is another tree that we're bringing into that plant palette. So just a little bit of history on the trees and why we did some of this is we were talking with the city and having discussions with the city and Richard Atkins, the urban forester for the city of Tempe. And we were looking for trees that were, one, evergreen, to give it, that palette and that look of an evergreen tree. The other was, maintenance of the tree, how, the growth pattern, and then also kind of the root structure of each of the trees. And, the ficus, we have a larger canopy. The Tipuwana tipu, it's a large canopy also. And then we get to the papuana, it's a large canopy, but a little bit thinner. And then the mastic and the Swan Hill are a smaller tree that used in other areas and courtyard areas and things like that, or down through the median. So concept 1 here that you're seeing on the screen is the primary street trees. We were proposing that it would be a 50% of the ficus and 50% of the Tipuwana tipu. And then also in the median and the accents, that's where we would have the ghost gum and the mastic tree. So those are kind of the items that we'd look at. So we're looking at, how these would be placed through the corridor. We're working with Richard and the city staff on how and where these would be placed throughout the corridor. So we're, we're still in that aspect of where these are going to be placed at, and but the quantities we're looking at a 50 and 50 of each of the species. Concept 2 is heavier on the ficus tree, 70%. So that would lean more towards the existing that is out there now, which is 100%. So we wouldn't be losing as many of the ficus or, doing the 50-50, but it's a 70-30 split between the ficus and then the Tipuwana tipu. And then we'd also, in the second concept, we'd also have the ghost gum and then introduce the fruitless olive, the Swan Hill, in that. So as you see on the slide here, currently Mill is 100% ficus, plus or minus a few of the trees down there. The new tree palettes, options are, they're more resilient, drought tolerant, climate appropriate, and biodiverse urban options for the Mill Avenue corridor. And then retaining a lesser percent of the ficus, but remaining, keeping the history and the character of the area that everybody, really likes, and the, the tree canopy and the shade that they all provide. So as Eric mentioned, today's request and our next steps, we'd like to get input on the hardscape and the sidewalk concepts that we presented, the street concepts, and get your input on those too. And then also, like Eric mentioned, we're having public and stakeholder feedback. It's ongoing now. We're from started in June. We've met with a lot of the DTA boards, and gosh, I'm trying to think, there's been quite a few of them that we've met with from starting in June and going till September, and the council meeting coming back up here in September 28th for design direction. And the we are currently working on the design of Mill Avenue. So we are working on that currently, but we also need to get these items and a little bit more direction from citizens and from council. Eric, did you want to go over that, Eric, or we kind of went through the schedule?
Yeah,
earlier,
no,
right?
that's great, Kurt.
Okay.
Hopefully everyone can hear me. I just turned my camera and audio back on. As Kurt mentioned, here's our schedule, and we are in the public, and as I mentioned earlier, we're in the public outreach phase of the project, reaching out to as many folks as we can. So if there's other groups that you want us to contact, please let us know. But an important date on this schedule is the council direction that we will be seeking on September 28th of this year. That'll be at a work study session in the afternoon. The next slide here is a link to our online forum that has specific questions where you can weigh in on anything you want to mention about Mill Avenue, but there are specific questions that will ask you to rank the 2 tree palette options and the 3 sidewalk options that Kurt presented today. We are hoping, it is our objective, that we coalesce around a frame or a direction for trees and for sidewalk that again creates the framework for filling in all the other pieces of the design that will go into Mill Avenue. And with that, I think we will open it up for questions. I see there's a couple, I think, in the chat.
Yep.
And so Sean is going to help navigate through that. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you, Eric. So yeah, we already see a couple questions in the chat that we'll go through. So if anyone else has any others, please feel free to type them in there. That helps us also just record them, but you're also welcome to raise your hand if you want to come on audio and ask as well. So the first question is, what is the life expectancy of these trees?
That is a great question.
That is a good question.
Yeah, and they will I'll say a couple of things, and then I believe the city has an urban forester, Richard Adkins. I believe he's on the call, and he can certainly provide a lot of insights into that question. Essentially, a lot of them will have a different lifespan. Each species is different, and a lot of what we're talking about now in Tempe, and especially experiencing the summer heat, the record-breaking summer heat that we've had. And if you've been to Mill Avenue, you've seen the impact of that heat and drought on the ficus. So we are trying to migrate towards trees that last longer in that urban environment and are more resilient in drought and heat conditions. And so the plant palette you see does provide that, while we are also trying to capture as much rainfall as possible and use as much drainage on the street as possible to feed the root systems through that Silva cell technology that Kurt talked about, so that the ficus we do have are less dependent on potable water and are also healthier and can endure some of the heat and stress that we have going on right now. So that was a lot there, but hopefully Richard is on and he can give a little bit more insights as to the lifespan of the different species that we're introducing. There he is.
Thank you, Eric. No, you touched on that pretty well. Urban trees have a very difficult life. So the whole thing with adding the Silva cells in there to capture stormwater as well as provide more rooting space, that's really what we are banking on with redoing the Mill Avenue there and providing more longevity for the tree species we're putting in. On average, with these species here, we're probably looking at about a 30 to 40 year total lifespan, depending on how we maintain them and to the height of which we want to maintain them. So that's kind of when we're putting together this palette here. We're looking at the 30 to 40, maybe 45 year lifespan.
Thanks, Richard.
Okay, Richard, and it seems a lot of tree questions, so you can stay on.
Oh, good.
So the next one asks, both Indian laurel and eucalyptus are high to super emitters of ozone precursors. Has any thought been given to trees that would have the same aesthetic and shade properties?
Indeed, it has. A lot of the oaks came up, which are planted throughout the downtown. And as the person that put the question up, you would know that oaks are high precursors as well. We've looked at that, trying to maintain an evergreen type canopy and a low mess. We are, fairly limited onto the species we have. That's why we tried to cut back some of the Indian laurels to, like a 50% or even 70% was part of the two concepts there. The eucalyptus, we are just narrowing it down to just the ghost gum, the Coriumba species. Are aware that they are fairly high emitters, but we are only having a few blocks of them. So hopefully not looking to put too much in there as far as precursors to ozone. But looking at other species, really nothing was fitting the palette that would fit within, the confines of the infrastructure in the downtown area. But that is a very good point and definitely something that has been considered when you're putting these species choices together.
Okay, thank you, Richard. The next tree question. Do you know what percentage of trees that look to be dead or currently dying after our last heat wave is? And would an extra 50% of water have helped them stay alive?
That's a very good question. It's probably the answer that I want to give you is a lot longer than the time we have at this meeting. I advise you to, reach out to me if you really want to walk through this. The ficus downtown, they've been there since the 80s. A lot of them have suffered from pre-existing conditions. They have a lot of extra stressors on them, one being the irrigation system that is not in good repair downtown. So we do not have homogeneous water going to all of the trees down there throughout the root systems. Plus, there is no, we're trying to introduce the silvicelles down there. There is no structures like that now, so the roots are just directly under the pavements. So with that, with the heat, a lot of them have lost their leaves. I am hoping for many of the mature ones to come back. Trees will throw off their leaves when they get heat stress like this because they're transpiring more water than what they can uptake. Some of the younger ones, those probably are declining and will not, return when the fall weather gets here, when the humidity comes back up and the precipitation increases. So right now, I'm looking at probably about 10 trees that are probably not going to make it. Similar to back in 2020, when we lost about 23 of the ficus in the downtown area. So with the more water there, it's mostly the root zone and having good soil volume, which that's what the new design is really looking to increase. That's what's going to make a big difference, the way we harvest water, increasing soil volume so that we actually have enough area for the trees to uptake water. Again, there's a lot more to the physiology of trees with heat stress. If you'd like to call me, I'd be happy to help you out with that.
Thank you, Richard. Next question, will any of the materials be permeable or otherwise could green stormwater infrastructure be incorporated into the design?
So I'll take I'll respond to this one and others can chime in. We are, I introduced myself, I'm the director of sustainability. This project is being led by multiple different departments and really green stormwater infrastructure, and specifically on this street, permeable pavers, water harvesting, we are looking at. Most of these pavers are permeable. The issue that we have with the sidewalk on Mill Avenue is that usually there is under that sidewalk a concrete base that is underneath the pavers in order to stabilize it. So that presents us with challenges in using a permeable paver that's truly permeable into the root systems below. However, we again are looking at, through technologies like the Silvicell, we're looking at maximizing our water capture on any drainage or rainfall on the street. And we will be continuing to look at that, like all the planting areas on the street. Can we create a situation where the water is flowing into those trees and really, again, helping to maximize the non-potable water that's going into those trees? So that helps. The city's embarking upon a citywide green stormwater infrastructure plan, and Mill Avenue is a part of that. And so we'll continue to look at ways in which we can incorporate into Mill Avenue and throughout the city, green stormwater infrastructure. So it's a design detail that we will be fleshing out as we get, later into the fall with the construction documents. But certainly we heard that kind of a comment at Monday's public meeting, and I'm glad to hear it today.
Thank you. So next question, olives don't provide great shade and also have a ton of suckers at the base, so higher maintenance. Why are they being suggested and why not a variety of pistache?
A fair question. We're not looking at the regular fruiting olives. These are fruitless olives. The Swan Hill variety tends to not sucker very much at all. I've seen a few that do, but most of them have absolutely no suckers. I consider the fruitless olive an extremely low maintenance tree. And actually, they do have a very good shade potential. There might be a little bit more slow growing, but they are evergreen and they actually get to be about 25 to 30 foot tall and provide a very nice shade. There is good examples throughout the city. If you want to contact me offline, I can direct you to some of these.
Thank you, Richard. Next question, will this project address ADA ramps? I've seen people in wheelchairs transferring between the bus and the light rail and struggling to get up ramps on Mill Avenue, like the ones at 5th and Mill Starbucks corner. The slope in some ramps is much greater than what is best for a person to use or what's ADA acceptable.
This is Kurt with J2. Yes, we will be looking at all of those aspects of the entire corridor and the ADA ramps in those areas, not just on the 5th and Mill, but all the way down through the corridor. And we also need to look at the side slopes from building to the curb, and then also the horizontal going towards the ADA ramps and the intersection. So yes, we will be looking at all of those aspects and making them ADA accessible.
We are also, just so everyone knows, I believe, Shauna, we are going to be attending the Mayor's Commission on Disability Concerns to get their specific feedback. And if there's a specific intersection or ramp that anyone is concerned about, please let us know. But a full ADA review, as well as improvements, is definitely a part of this project.
So I'm not seeing any other questions right now or hands raised. Did anyone else have any other questions? And then I did also drop in the chat the direct link to the forum. We really appreciate everyone giving their feedback there as well. All right, so Eric and Kurt, maybe if you have any last comments before otherwise we can wrap up early.
Yeah, I don't. I really encourage everyone to go to the link on the screen and provide your feedback. We do our best to capture the comments that we heard in the meeting, but getting them written really makes it easier for us to share them with the council. And again, this is a really iconic and important street for the city, for the region, and we want to get it right. So everyone's voice is really important in how we design this.
And I think you may have mentioned it earlier, Eric, on the screen here now, please go to the website, give us your input. That's the best way, and make comments there, and we can get that taken care of and analyzed and get it into the design. So we're excited about this project and looking forward to moving on with it.
Thanks, everyone.